and he was showing this image of some basically entirely irrelevant monolith on Phobos, which is the moon of Mars.
Yes.
And he was giving this interview in which he was saying, "This is why we want to go to Mars, because we can look at this monolith, and maybe we'll be able to say maybe there's life there." And he was really, quite frankly, Henrik, lying. He was not addressing the copious evidence of life on Mars that by that time had already been on the internet for 8 months. And I wrote it. And I'm looking at this interview by Buzz Aldrin. I'm going, this is as far as they've taken the cover-up of life on Mars. NASA is now besmirching the reputation, the historical legacy of the second man to land on the moon. Because I am, after all, an adherent to the position that we did land on the moon, because my dad had gotten the FBI security clearance to design the instrumentation for the lunar module. I don't think that was some put-up job. I mean, that was a real investigation. You know, the FBI guys came to our house, okay? So growing up in that culture, I have no doubt that we landed on the moon. I think the reason that they propagated the notion that we didn't go there was as a disinformational ploy regarding why we left the moon, which is that they found ancient ruins there.
Right.
And they didn't want to form this civilization that we're the second major civilization, human civilization, to emerge on Earth. But anyway, I was watching that C-SPAN interview with Buzz, and I'm thinking, this is the final straw for me. Here they're tarnishing the reputation of this great space scientist. I mean, Buzz Aldrin, after all, was not just the second man to land on the moon. He was the space scientist who charted the way we were going to time our landing there. He did the math to get us there. And here 40 years after the lunar landing, they're not only concealing that we have a presence on Mars because we've been teleporting people there, that NASA has been used as a disinformational cover for a secret space program, but they were using him to completely indicate that the most significant artifact that has ever been found on Mars is this silly monolith or stellum or whatever that was photographed on Phobos. That even ignores the condign evidence that's been furnished by researchers like Richard Hoagland regarding the face on Mars at Cydonia, which is clearly, which the former chief astronomer for the U.S. Navy, the late Dr. Thomas C. Van Flanderen, determined was undoubtedly an artificial object by odds of 1,000 billion. Okay, so you know when they were setting up the situation where when he should be in the full flower of his preeminence as one of our greatest space scientists, they're using Buzz Aldrin for this sort of shallow disinformational function. I think that was really where we crossed the Rubicon, and I decided, look, if we have to confront the fact that NASA, the lunar launch, and indeed the legacy of the astronauts and the space shuttle program itself, both Mercury, Gemini, and Apollo, and also the space shuttle program have been used as a disinformational cover for the presence of artifacts on the moon, for the presence of artifacts and life on Mars, for the human presence on Mars, we're really going to have to confront that and essentially deal with the disquieting fact that this has been a dimension of the overt conventional space program. Rather than implement its mission as it was given by the U.S. Congress in the NASA Act of 1958 to foster the expansion of human knowledge of space, it seems at this point that the public space program has been used as a cover for the secret space program. And to the limited that I was involved in that in 1981 when I went up to Mars, I believe that just as I'm under a cosmic duty to my fellow inhabitants of this planet to reveal what I know about life forms and artifacts on Mars, I think at this point it would be untenable for me not to challenge NASA and say, look, when you're getting Buzz Aldrin to lie about this on the 40th anniversary of the lunar landing, you're really implicated in a profoundly serious and dysfunctional conspiracy to conceal the truth. And that's the position that we're in at this point.
Absolutely, that is the case. And who knows, maybe he's under a Masonic oath or something, who knows. But on the other hand, why do you think that they would conceal this information then? Is it, I mean, I've heard different theories about the fact that there is basically knowledge about human past in what has been happening on Mars, meaning that there's a relationship between the development of the human species on this planet and on Mars. And they simply want to have full access of that information firsthand. They don't want anyone else to get in there and be nosy about the information, so to speak. This is another military program, pretty much, that is being run for the purpose of extracting information in order to gain an upper hand, if you will, of what the origins of the human species is. And for that fact, do not, for Christ's sake, tell anybody about what has been happening on Mars, because that would open up the can of worms, so to speak. Do you think that could be the case, or is there anything else going on to the fact why they want to suppress information about the life on Mars?
Well, I think you've described a major part of it. Basically, the reason or basis for the cover-up of life on Mars and the U.S. presence there and the existence of the secret space program. But just on background, I would say that my guess would be that Mars clearly is an outpost in our solar system where there was already collaboration to establish an extraterrestrial defense posture in collaboration with the Martians. That would explain the encounter that we had with the 3 Martian astronauts. And I'm calling them astronauts because it was a conventional ship and neither a superluminal craft nor a teleporter that was parked there at the hangar at Curtiss Wright in 1970. So that would explain the liaison between Martian and Earthian space scientists, actually in the aerospace context. I mean, Curtiss Wright was an aeronautical facility, so they were probably liaising, and what I believe they were talking about was, in fact, the performance of craft that were then being shared by the Martians with us. So that would probably be what became the Aurora. Okay, so my guess would be that the number one reason for the secrecy would be that they decided to construct an overt space program in which they would valorize the human stepping into space. That was done under, the whole way in which the lunar landing was handled. It was valorized as these macho astronauts in these fancy spacesuits. They're planting the American flag there.
Mm.
The American flag at that point was associated with the Allied victory in World War II, and so forth. The raising of the flag at Iwo Jima gets replicated in the placement of the U.S. flag on the surface of the moon. And so they decided to basically create an overt space program in which they would then conceal other forms of exploration of the cosmos, both the time-space exploration that was going on under DARPA in Project Pegasus, basically the secret twin to Project Mercury, as it were, but also create a secret space program with that new time-space capability to establish an extraterrestrial defense posture on Mars. There's also just the whole Brookings dimension, that in the same way that the Brookings report indicated that human civilization might fall apart if the governments of the world confirmed the existence of extraterrestrial civilizations and extraterrestrial visitation to Earth. In a similar way, we probably didn't go back to the moon, and they've been concealing what's on the moon and Mars because they're afraid that if they reveal what's up there, everybody on planet Earth will know that we're living in the second Earth civilization, and therefore we're in a more tenuous situation than we thought we were.
Yeah.
Because the last one was destroyed actually by cosmological forces outside the control of that civilization.
Exactly. So ultimately, what it hints about to me is another control factor, pretty much, that we are very much shielded off in terms of what has happened in our solar system, historically speaking, and that is being used in one way against us, so to speak. We're not fully informed about our origins, and I think that's detrimental at the end of the day to the human species. You know what I mean?
I think it's detrimental, but my position is, even if it is detrimental, I believe that human beings possess, as a human right, a true telling of the history of their own solar system.
Of course.
I mean, just like when we raise a child, we raise the child and educate the child so they know as much as possible about the natural world, because it's their natural world, but also to protect them from predators and what might happen around water, and other threats to their survival, that they might drown in water and so forth. So we inculcate children to have a mastery of their environment, and that's fundamentally human. We do that out of love for our children. And in a similar way, when we come into existence in this solar system, we all have a right to know as much as possible about what's on the moon, what's on Mars. And so this really is a fundamentally significant political and philosophical issue.
Yes.
I believe the disclosure movement is going to become as significant of a mass movement as the abolition movement, because